Okay, we are live, everyone. Are we live?
Mine says
Yep, I got
Yes,
the
we are
confirmation on
live.
mine. Okay.
Yes, we are. Hello, everyone. This is Misha Houston, and we are here for our Game of Thrones late night live stream. We have a special guest with us today, Mr. AU Packmule. Hello, AU. What's going on?
I'm just hanging out with you girls and Tony. So I'm not special. I'm just a guy, and my name is John. You can call me John. Glad to do it.
Okay.
My channel is AU Packmule, of course, but yeah, I love hanging out with you guys and watching you all the time. So.
Oh, thank you. Oh, that's nice. Thank you.
Everyone want to do their introductions?
Sure. I'm Lady Wolverton. You can find me at Lady Wolverton's Den, but I'm really not doing anything right now. I'm happy to not be in charge. But you can find me on Facebook and Twitter under Jennifer Wolverton. And everybody just call me Jen. And I just want to show everybody real quick. Me and my husband's anniversary was November 5th. He surprised me with the Targaryen banner as well as a Stark banner. So yay.
What about you, Shelley?
Yeah, well, you know, I'm the mischievous one. I am Shelley. And for right now, I did have like the shirt business, and I'm also doing the Reiki, and I'm doing all of that, but I'm gonna hold off on like kind of plugging my stuff until next year, because I'm gonna do like a new rehash and just do all of my different stuff all together starting with the new year. So that's why I won't sit down and promote too much. But yeah, I'm here, and I get to do John too tonight.
Yes, it's Shelley's night, her first time doing the overview for us, and I'm happy to have a few weeks off. So thank you.
Misha, I was gonna do a bad joke and be like, I get to pop my cherry tonight. Yay.
Well, you did it anyway. We get a little bit rowdy in here, but not too much.
Not too much. No, just a little bit. Just a little bit.
Get at him, Tony. Introduce yourself. Tony, you there?
Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, it's Tony, aka Lord Last Hearth. Just call me Tony. I know that Lord Last Hearth can get kind of tongue tied for people. It was a stupid name, but
no,
yeah,
it's not.
I just do basically gaming playthroughs that are pretty much like in the Game of Thrones world instead of like what the vanilla version is, and I tend to do at least 1 or 2 live streams a week. It's usually on other people's channels. So yeah, I mean, I'm glad that you guys are involving me with this every week. And it's always good to talk to people about Game of Thrones. And like I say all the time, it don't matter to me if you got 1 subscriber or 5 million. If you're talking Game of Thrones, I'm in.
And I am Misha Houston. I have been trying to keep up with my channel as best I can in the realm of Game of Thrones, but it's just been a struggle. But I am, and I promise this time that I am going to put out my next video. Now, before I get started, I wanted to give a shout out to Mr. Preston Jacobs. He has recently put out another video called The Prepping for Winter Elaine 1. He himself is now doing the Elaine 1 Winter, analysis, as I've been doing. So I am looking very forward to watching that video, and I want to compare notes with him. I would love to chat with him or invite him on our chat. But if I can't, I will be watching that video from a distance, and I am so proud for him to be doing that. I was waiting for him to do that. do that chapter. So maybe we can compare notes. Now, as far as I go, I am Misha Houston. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Instagram. You can find me on YouTube as well. And I'll always be here, for as long as Game of Thrones goes on. So thank you, and everybody, welcome to my channel. I appreciate it. I want to give a shout out to the Lord of the Last Hearth on our panel. I want to give a shout out to Cammie, Pete Easy, Justin Thomas. Hopefully you can get your situation fixed and you can get back on our show, Justin. So
Hey, Cammie. Hey, Justin.
Yeah. Also,
Hey,
I want to give
everybody.
a shout out to Cammie. Thank you so much, Cammie, for joining us tonight. I appreciate it.
Hi, Cammie.
Hey.
Shelley, it's all on you, girl. This is your week. So we're doing John 2 from A Game of Thrones. And this is our weekly book club. And this is our next chapter, John 2. This is your week, so you can go ahead and get it started.
All right, nice. So the first part that I wrote down was about how John was walking through Winterfell, and he was having like a reflection about how that could be the last time that he was to ever walk around Winterfell at all. And just how emotional it must have been for him, because it took him about a good hour extra than when they were supposed to leave for him to finally say his goodbyes and to also muster enough courage in order to even go to see Bran before he left. As Bran is going through and he's making it up to see Bran, he has a run-in with Catelyn. And he mentions how other times in his life when Catelyn turns around and she kind of just snaps at him the minute that he's at the actual entrance of the room. Other times he would have sat down and he would have ran away and probably even cried. But this time was different because for him, he was saying to himself, look, I'm getting ready to join the Night's Watch. I'm getting ready to be a brother on the wall. And there's going to be more terrifying things than Catelyn Tully Stark. And I enjoyed that part a lot. And so for John to be able to stand up to Catelyn and to finally say, you know what, you can't bully me anymore, regardless of if I'm a bastard or not. I have to grow up one day, and that was him growing up. And she even threatened and said, oh, well, I'll call the guards. And he was like, well, go ahead and call them. But she didn't, because she was probably taken aback that he had finally found his voice and was able to finally put her in her place and let her know, look, you're not going to bully me anymore. I'm getting ready to grow up and be a man and to face more dangers than what I would ever have to deal with you. And I found that to be really refreshing as far as for John's character. Mm-hmm. And as John approached the bed, he seen his little brother Bran just laying there. And I'm sorry, I got my crazy kids in the background. But as John approached the bed, he seen just how sickly Bran was, and he had made a comment about how Bran, his skin, he just looked like skin and bones. There was no meat on him, and he looked like a skeleton with skin on, and you could see that his nails were kind of ragged, and he just wasn't really still breathing, so you could tell that he was still alive. Mm-hmm. But then, mind you, underneath the actual sheets, his legs were contorted and twisted, and the idea just made John kind of sick, but he still approached him because that was his brother, you know. Mm-hmm. From there, it goes into how and tells Bran that he's about to leave for the wall, and the reason why they have to go before the rest of the party is that the snow has started falling, and it's going to be a trek as it is just to get up to the wall. So that's why Uncle Benjamin is kind of looking for him, but John is still hesitant because he really doesn't want to leave the only home that he's known and the only place that he's known, to go to a place that's unknown and cold and harsh and just a whole different experience. But and as he's sitting down and he's talking to Bran and he's letting him know, and he gives him a kiss on the lips because he's going to miss his brother, and he's going through and just trying to talk to Bran. Catelyn ends up turning to him, and she starts saying how she had prayed for Bran to stay with her, and how Bran was her sweet and special child, and she didn't want him to leave. And she prayed to all 7 gods, and her prayers were answered, even though it wasn't the kind of prayer that she had wanted. But Bran still stayed, but he just didn't stay in the same way that she had wanted him to stay, unfortunately. And for me, that's like a reflection of when people turn around and they pray, or they do spell work, or they do something. A lot of times when you think you're going to get something good, or you think that that you've turned around and you've petitioned like your God to grant your prayers or your wishes, they end up fulfilling your wishes, but they fulfill your wishes in another sense of the word, because you, just like the saying, be careful what you wish for. And Catelyn
Or pray for.
Yep. And so that's what Catelyn ended up confessing was that she wished for it and she got her wish, but because of how she made her wish, she ended up getting it, but not in the same way as what she would have thought. And then that's when she looks up at John and she says that she wishes that it would have been him instead of her son. And John he takes that and he has to leave on that note, because that's just, it's one of the harshest things to tell someone is, oh, well, my son's laying here dying, and I wished for my son to be here, but not in this capacity. And instead of having my son laying here, I wish it was you instead laying here half broken, because then she probably would have prayed for the gods to finally turn around and just to sweep him and to have death come and take John. But instead, because of her being as nasty and as selfish as she is, she ended up hurting her own child in the process. So I thought that was kind of ironic. And then after John leaves and he leaves the room where Bran was staying and recuperating and Catelyn, he ends up seeing his brother Robb, and Robb Stark pretty much has taken more of a leader role as far as Winterfell and dishing out different commands and helping everybody getting ready who's either leaving for the Wall or leaving for King's Landing. And because since his mother has an absence, he's trying to fill that void. John sits down and he approaches his brother, and they have like a small little chat in between both of them. And Robb sees that he has kind of a face, and he's like, what did my mother do to you? And John turns around and he changes his face real quick, and he's like, oh no, she was very kind. She was very...
Shelley, what happened?
I'm not sure.
I just dropped.
Okay. She was talking about. Yeah. She was talking about Robb outside, and from what I've heard, and what I've read and felt throughout this chapter, there was a big sense of everyone preparing. Everyone's getting ready. Everyone's moving. Everyone's walking and packing their bags, and there's an excitement going on, around Winterfell. But
sorry,
yeah,
I got kicked out real quick.
Yeah,
okay.
And I just want to say this real quick though. one of the things that stuck out to me, Rob asked him specifically, how did my lady mother treat you? And it just goes to John's character that instead of whining about, well, she was very rude to me or whatever, he said, she treated me very well. And that shows to John's character right there. It speaks volumes.
Yeah, I wish I would have had the experience to like not come into reading the books without seeing any of the show, because if you look like in the first book, you can't really tell off that book that John's like going on a path to being this like special person. And just for example, this chapter, John 2, it's literally one of if not the shortest chapter in all the books. It's only 3 pages long. You know, so even with that being said, you're thinking like he can't be, that important if, for one, they put him down being a bastard and going to say the best place for him is going to the wall, and that's sad when that's your best choice,
Yeah,
and like true. Yeah, John didn't really know all the stuff that goes on there, how it's like a glorified penal colony, and there's not really no knights there that just volunteered like the old days. So it's like you look at John and you're not thinking like that he's gonna, end up playing this big role if you've never seen the show. So it's like it'd been cool just to get that, like when you start to get that realization how special he is later on in the other books. I think it's real good how George R. R. Martin does that. Like he gets even these people have like POV chapters. It's like he'll get you to where you're thinking one way about him, and then all of a sudden you change how you feel about him, because he's real good at progressing the character. And like a lot of people always would say, like when there's a character in there that doesn't have a POV, well, they must die or not be around to the end, because if they were that important, they'd have a POV. And it kind of goes, a little bit of an example with this one with John, like John has a POV, but it's 3 pages long. So like you got Danny and all the other ones got like over 20 pages in a chapter.
Yeah, and he only gets 3, but yet he is such a pivotal part of our story. But now that I'm looking back, this might be just the end of his life. George R. Martin may not decide to bring him back after all, like they did in the books. So this may be the last days of his life, these last 2 years of his life. And it's really sad that he may not get more time in the story. I hope that he does come back somehow. I hope George brings him back in the books. But this may be the last part of his life. And I also wanted to bring up a point that I read. Something cold moved in her eyes. And that was a beautiful foreshadowing of Lady Stoneheart. I mean, Lady Stoneheart had these cold, dead eyes. And apparently those eyes hasn't really changed that much as you think they have, from her living self to her dead self. So I thought that was a very, very, excellent foreshadowing and a wonderful point to point out. Shelley, would you like to continue?
Yeah. I think you left off at John saying goodbye to Arya, basically, the next thing. Shelley?
Turn your mic on, Shelley.
Sorry, I just seen I had it muted. Sorry, guys. Okay. So I left off where Stark and Snow say their goodbyes, because at the end they kind of address each other as Stark and as Snow, and they actually give each other a hug, and it shows that regardless of if John is a bastard, at least his siblings kind of, or at least some of his siblings, still think of him as their brother or as family, but in the end, they still have to do the formalities, and in the end, John knows where his place is. Kind of is what I was reading when I read that. From there, John ends up going over and to their smiths, and he gets his present for Arya, and he wraps it in a cloth, and then he goes into Arya's room, and Arya's sitting there, and she has to repack her trunk all over again, because the Septa Mordain had come in and said that a lady's not supposed to just throw their clothes willy-nilly into a trunk. They're supposed to be folded nicely. And Arya is sitting there, and she's complaining about having to fold them nicely and put her clothes away nicely because she's a lady. And that's when Jon tells her that he has a present, and Arya has Nymeria go out and stand guard, just in case if anybody comes and tries to see if she's doing what she's supposed to be doing, because she's in trouble all over again, and she wasn't able to leave out of her room because of that, and she wasn't able to find Jon earlier. So as Jon pulls out the cloth and he unravels it, he shows her the saber, and she goes crazy, and she jumps on him, and she gives him a hug, and they start their the same conversation that you see in the show, basically, to where he tells her, your first rule of swordsmanship is stick them with the pointy end. And she sits there and she slaps him, and she's like, I already know that, silly. One thing that had jumped out at me about that interaction is that you kind of see it in the show, but the books explain more about how she showers her brother with kisses, and she hugs him, and she shows a lot of love and affection. And I can kind of see where people have started to think that maybe there's something between like Jon and Arya, just because she shows him more affection than she does to any of her other siblings. But that's because when they're sitting down and describing it, the interaction between Jon and Arya is that she has the same brown eyes as he does, and the same dark hair, and she has that same stark look to her, that same northern look to her, whereas all her other siblings all look like they belong in the Riverlands, or they have just that distinct Tully look to them. And I sat down, and as far as the whole chapter was concerned, it was a small chapter, but to me, it was almost like it played out just like how it did in the show. I can't remember if Jon had seen Robb before he went to go see Arya.
It was before.
Okay. And so, it was a good chapter, and it showed just where Jon was as far as his mentality was concerned, because he was a little scared and he was homesick while he was still at home, and he just kept taking that time and kind of waiting it out. He waited it out before he went to go see Bran because he had to deal with Catelyn, and he waited it out because he just really didn't want to go and to leave the only place that he knows as home.
Yeah, shit was getting real.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just, as far as I go, I just really felt like that was what Jon needed. Jon needed to be sent away with love, and no one was offering him that. He did.
And one of the things I noted is that can be compared to even now today, veterans. Also still kind of being treated like, you can join the Army or the Navy, what have you, any of the armed forces at 18, but you couldn't buy alcohol. My dad famously tells how he tried to buy a beer at the O'Hare Airport before he was being shipped off to Vietnam, and he was only 18 and couldn't buy it. And an older gentleman behind him knew exactly what was going on and bought 2 beers and walked up to where my dad was sitting and was like, where are you being shipped to, soldier? And gave him a beer. And that's just, and then what you said, Shelley, about him never knowing if he'll ever be back. That is completely how my dad felt. And completely, I asked my dad one time famously, this is kind of scandalous, but I was very young and I can't believe I even asked him this. It was one of the more ballsier questions in my life. We had just watched a movie or something. And I asked my dad if he ever went teeny cat houses in Vietnam. And he was like, yeah, I did, Jennifer, and it's because I didn't know if it was my last day on earth or not. So you have to put these kind of things in perspective like that. And anyway, hey, you jump in anytime you like, please.
You asking him or him telling you?
We had just watched a movie or something that kind of addressed it. And I was in like the 5th grade and I asked him, did you ever? And he was like, I'm going to tell you the truth, Jennifer. Or he said, I'll tell you when you're old enough to understand. And then later in life, I addressed it again and I said, Dad, which meant yes, of course, because he didn't say no, you know. And later in life, we had the conversation. I was like, Dad, I understand 100% because you didn't know if it was your last day or not, and etc. And it's like on Split, etc. And I remember one time we watched this movie about an Amerasian child that had got brought over, and the person had to, you know, say, yeah, I fathered this child in Vietnam. And my dad was just like, if I ever find out I've given my DNA at the vet center, if I ever find out I have a child, there will be 100% accepted in this house. And I kind of begrudged that. But now that I'm older, 100% I understand. I understand.
Yeah, because it's like, I understand that too. I mean, and as much as it kind of does hurt as far as being a woman is concerned, like I can understand how Catelyn must feel knowing that her husband may have probably, well, that her husband brought home a child from another woman. But then again, the fact is that Ned is a very honorable individual. And the fact that he even brought this child home and let his wife know, hey, look, it was a time of war, and as a man of honor, I just could not let this child be raised anywhere else as a bastard and never know what happened to him, you know? And so I applaud Ned for even having or even doing that, even though we know the real story is that he's not even his bastard. But just the fact that Ned would even sit down and try to do the honorable thing, where in our culture, in our society now, it's kind of the opposite. You don't really see a lot of men taking responsibility for what they do and with whom they do it with, you know?
Right. Just like Robert had a bastard in the Aerie called Maya Stone. And while he did make sure she had a place in society, and really even I think later in life, John Aaron took that over. But if you read about that, he kind of treats her like a pet until they leave the Erie, and then it's kind of like out of sight, out of mind. So what Ned did was quite unusual.
Well, let me say this about Ned.
Definitely, especially him and have him in his household.
Yeah, Ned brought him home, but when Catelyn dared to challenge Ned about it, he shut her down just like that. Mm-hmm. He would not even allow her to speak of that subject to her, and it was as cold and heartless and distant as he has ever been with her. So, I mean, yes, he took care of his son, and yes, I understand the circumstances. But apparently,
and we see Edric Storm taken care of.
He wasn't even willing to.
And we see Edric Storm taken care of, but that's also because his mother was a noble woman.
Yeah, but I mean, as far as Ned goes, he wasn't even willing to broach the subject. He just expected Catelyn to go along with it. And apparently, by doing so, her hostility was taken away from Ned and forced onto John. And I have to give him a thumbs down for that, because he should have owned up to that. He should have sat his wife down. I mean, and let her vent, let her get over it. But no, he made sure that hatred went directly to John.
Well, you got to Miss Houston.
Wait, go ahead, AU.
No, I was just going to say, in regards to that specific, he was really concerned about the whole family's well-being, because if he found out Robert found out that they were housing a Targaryen,
Yeah.
their whole family
True.
could have been in danger. So
True.
he was really protecting her from herself by not giving
Yeah.
that information.
I understand.
They got loose lips, you know.
Yeah. Mhm.
Everybody wants to talk.
Yeah, I
True.
totally
So,
understand.
and
You're absolutely right in that regard, but still, it still created a great discord within that family, and the transference of the hatred and the anger and the
Yes.
upset was just pushed onto John, and for a child shouldn't have to suffer that. It was for Ned to take the responsibility onto himself, even
and
though
to
he
take
was
the
trying to
punishment too.
protect the family and the punishment, right? It wasn't for John to have that hatred thrown upon him like that. And I understand that they were trying to protect the family and it was for the greater good, but it did come with a price. And it was
Yeah.
John who was paying that price and not Ned Stark or anyone else. So I
And
mean,
and
that's a lot to put on a child.
that's something that kind of gets me is that John is about 14, about 13, 14 in the story, right?
Yeah, he's
And
14.
yes, and I would think that within 14 years that Ned would have turned around and would have put his wife in her place to say, look, stop punishing that boy, stop humiliating that boy. If you want to take anything out on someone, you need to take it out on me and to leave it alone.
Right.
But
exactly.
then but the other thing that I also get that I don't get is why Ned wasn't able to trust his wife Catelyn with that information, which to me it makes me think that maybe Catelyn, with the way she is, that maybe Ned didn't completely trust her all the way, and that's why he had to keep certain secrets from her.
He didn't know Catelyn. He did not even know Catelyn when he married her. So
True.
the issue of trust, I mean, of course he didn't trust her as he should, because they really weren't supposed to get married. It was an awkward marriage in the beginning. They were supposed to be brother-in-law and sister-in-law. So
Yeah.
the trust, I mean, that probably explains the lack of trust in the marriage. Now it grew and became a deep, lovely, beautiful love in time. But in the beginning, it wasn't even like that. And he married her and then went off to war not long after. So he really
True.
didn't know Catelyn, and he only
When they married, both he and Catelyn were in a state of shock and grief.
Yeah.
Because of the Mad King's actions, the killing of Rickard and Bran. I mean, I can't remember their names. Rickard and who else?
Brandon.
And Brandon.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and his father Brandon.
Yeah, Brandon.
And then the
Rickard.
war, and he's gone they have like one night together, and then he's gone for, what is it, like a year and a half, 2 years?
Yeah.
Yep, for the war.
So they barely knew each other. So the fact that he didn't trust her all the way, I can understand the lack of trust. They don't know.
I mean, even after he married her, and then they had I believe they had one night together, he probably still kind of thought of her as his brother's fiance.
True.
It's a fortnight. It was 2 weeks.
Yeah, 2 weeks.
A fortnight is 2 weeks, yes. Two
full
days
weeks,
in a continuous week.
Yeah, because they gave him a fortnight to consummate his marriage, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
So
okay,
they're
my
like,
bad. I had wrote down the fortnight 2 weeks because that's more of a European term.
Yeah.
I want to go back to where when John walks in, is going to see Bran. He specifically says that with Ghost by his side, it gives him strength when Bran's direwolf howls. And also when he first sees Bran, kind of Bran is being fed a water and honey mixture on a feather. That is kind of what the nectar of the gods was considered, was kind of like honey. And it makes you wonder, is that not a bit of foreshadowing on what Bran is to become?
Oh, well, that's an interesting take on that.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
I was thinking more of the drawn face that Shelley was describing, and it made me think of Bloodraven. How he's like really shrunken. His nails are
you're right.
But yeah, that's a pretty cool thing.
Yeah. And if you have ever, y'all, when I had my leg surgery years ago and was in the hospital for bed for 30 days, even in just 30 days, by the time I got out of the hospital, my left leg was completely flaccid. You know, no more muscle tone, no anything in that left leg.
And unfortunately for Bran, he'll never be able to use his legs again, and so his legs will probably always be kind of scrawny because I remember how they would have like veterans or just people who have had serious car accidents, and when
anybody in a wheelchair, if that has not had use of their legs in a while, you'll notice they kind of have chicken legs. No offense.
Because they'll have, and I remember like this one lady in particular, she would always wear a kind of blanket over her legs when she was in her wheelchair because she didn't want people to see how her legs were like, and from the top up where you can actually see them in the wheelchair, you can see that they're healthy, and some people even have like their arms jacked because they always have to do the wheelchair thing. And I remember like the guy that I was talking about from like when I was in high school, his arms were pretty jacked because back then it was more common to see people with the wheelchairs moving themselves than it was common to see people in like the electric wheelchairs, because back in the 90s, even the electric wheelchairs were kind of like a luxury. And so a lot of people would use their upper body and their arms. And now with later in the story, Bran's going to have to deal with that as well, having to learn everything and to cope with that. But that lower half of him is it might get a little bit of nutrients once he starts eating and everything, but from then on, his legs are always going to end up just being a little bit scrawnier. And we just got a message from Monty G to ask if she can get on the stream.
She wants in? You're live?
Yeah.
Let me see if I have her thing. Here it is. Wait a minute. MMGAER. What is her Gmail address?
Who is it?
Money wants in.
Money G, okay. Also, y'all, this marks really the first time in the books, I believe, that John fully stands up to Catelyn when he's like, call the guards then.
Yeah.
Yep.
It was about time he did that.
It was coming out for John as far as that was concerned.
Yeah, absolutely. It was about time he stood up to that woman. I mean,
it was.
Yeah, it was a great moment for him. It showed that he had courage, and he's going to.
And I think it was a good thing that he got that out of the way and did that before he left.
Yeah, he needed to be. Yeah, she needed to be sat down in that moment just for a minute. I know that she was suffering and grieving, but he needed to do that before he left.
And also, like,
it's not going to be the same. Excuse me. Go ahead, Shelley.
And also, I also agree with how John had approached the idea as well, because if he's scared of just a freaking Tully or Tully trying to pass as a Stark, then how would he be able to go to the wall and to fend the Seven Realms and have to deal with all types of booger wolves and night walkers and all types of stuff up there,
right?
if he can't even deal with the Tully, you know. And so that was his going and transitioning from being a boy to embracing being a man, because she needed to have her place, regardless of if he's a bastard. He still is a male, and as a male, he still has a little more authority than what she does. And so that's why when he sat down, and regardless of how nasty she was, he put his foot down and he let her know right then and there, you know what, all these years I've been just a little frightened boy of you because you've always been an uber cunt to me and been all types of mean over something that I didn't even do. and now he's just like, I'm not having that no more. So I think that it took Catelyn aback, and I think
agree.
that in that moment she finally seen him for himself, and seeing that regardless he is a man now of grown age, and if she can't respect that, then he'll make sure she learns how to respect that, you know.
Also, you guys, I think there's a little bit of foreshadowing. John says that Bran looks as a leaf that might blow away. Well, the next time we really have an encounter with John and Bran is when he's ranging with the half hand, and he thinks that small sapling weirwood tree, he thinks he hears his brother's voice and sees Bran's face. So leaf, tree, that might be going a little too hardcore, just trying to find something, but it is interesting.
Yeah. And it did sound like foreshadowing too, the way that he did describe him as being strong, and with his claws and everything, just like AU said.
Like Bloodraven.
Just like Bloodraven, yeah, because in the afterwards, as far as the show, once Bran finally makes it down towards like Winterfell and everything, you can see that he did finally gain some strength. But while he was up there training as well, he looked pretty skinny and pretty sickly all over again, just like how Bloodraven was all caught up in that tree, because he had to dedicate himself more to learning the secrets of being a green seer. And they probably didn't emphasize, I mean, in the show it doesn't show what his diet consisted of, but I'm betting that it was just the rarest of food, because they're up there in the north, and it's pretty much cold, so there's only so much stuff that you can actually eat up there, and it's not like they can go out and outsource over all the way to Highgarden and say, hey, can I get a couple of fruits and vegetables to go with this meat? So his diet was very restricted up there, just like Bloodraven's. And I forget, I know they mentioned what kind of a diet Bloodraven was on, but I forget what diet, what it was that he was eating, because it was some kind of concoction, I think, that the Children of the Forest was making for him, right?
Weirwood paste, you said, John?
Yeah.
Jojen paste, they call it.
Yeah, because they're not sure whether or not Jojen was in it or not. Nobody ever sees Jojen again. There's theories out there all over about that. I want to mention one more thing, and then let's hear from the guys. Bran still hadn't named his direwolf yet. Mm-hmm. And he's the only one.
Mm-hmm. Well, he certainly can't name it now, so who knows.
Right. He names it after he comes back, which I think that somehow just shows the position he's going to have. I think he's going to basically be a big part of ending the war and bringing the summer. Like I've always said to you guys, I think the names of the direwolves do represent, and also him being fed what sounded to me immediately like what you hear of in Greek mythology of being the nectar of the gods. I think that, is something to that. And John, Tony, y'all are awful quiet.
I'm just listening.
Yeah, we did.
That's fine. Okay, sweetie.
Yeah, you got to jump in around here. Do you have any observations, any points that you want to point out?
I just like the way that the interaction between Rob and John. I think that was really awesome. And of course, the familiarity between Arya and John is already there. So that's established. And even though, Bran was in a comatose state, he still makes a huge effort to make sure he has that interpersonal connection with him. He didn't do that with Sansa. He didn't do that with a lot of the other people that were in Winterfell, but he made sure he got to see them.
Yeah.
He did. And And once again, the way he stood up to Catelyn and was like, no, this is my brother. I'm going to say goodbye, just speaks to Jon's character once again.
Yeah, I mean, and one more thing, Sansa. He never, had any kind of conversation with Sansa at all.
The only thing about Sansa in this chapter is him and Arya mention don't tell Sansa, and they say it in unison. So apparently Sansa has a reputation of a tattletale.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I mean,
But then on top of that, Sansa, sorry, Mish.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Said, and on top of that, Sansa already treats her sister Arya like she's a bastard as well, and that further pushes Arya away from Sansa, and I mean, and it also helps to solidify her relationship between her and her brother Jon, like, because she looks and she sees how the rest of her siblings all look like Tullys, and how Sansa treats her and makes fun of her because she really looks like a northern girl, and for Arya, it just makes it harder to even relate to your sister that way when your sister looks down upon you. Yeah. And they look down upon Jon as well. So that's why she feels in good company being with her brother, regardless of if he's a bastard or not.
Now, I would like to bring up Arya for a second in this. In the Arya chapter that we did some time ago, I talked about her biting on her lip. Mm-hmm. And how that's a neurosis, and it comes from lack of attention and lack of love. And in this chapter, she was not biting her lip because she was receiving the love. She was receiving the attention. She received it from her direwolf and from Jon. And she was not biting on that lip here. Yeah. She was receiving the love and the joy, and she was giving it as well. She showered him in kisses. She received a gift from him. She received the beautiful sword, and they named it together. It showed, a great sense of togetherness, and she was not biting on her lip, which I said before was a nervous tick.
They named Needle together. It's like your favorite. Guess what its name is? You got to name it like ice. She says, "You mean like ice?" And he's like, "Yeah." What's your favorite thing? And then they're like, Needle. They can, I think the Arya and Jon relationship, they can both be themselves with each other. Yeah. And it's just very apparent in this chapter, especially.
Mm-hmm. When he was talking to Rob, there was love there and there was a familiarity there, but it wasn't warm. And there was a warmth with Arya that he has when he doesn't have with anyone else, any other siblings, but it was a cold distance between them. But it's not that way with Arya.
For me, when Rob and Jon kind of interacted, it kind of felt more like how guys or how boys interact with each other, because you don't, when you have two men together, they don't sit down and they don't hug all over each other and gush and talk about how they feel, and so it was kind of like a man-to-man kind of interaction, so in a sense it was a little warm, but then in a sense it was a little cold too, because as men, they can't show too much emotion, and they can't have that heart to heart kind of interaction between one man and another man, because in a sense, what that probably, if you were to have like a strong connection or a strong interaction like that would look more like the grounds of two men in a relationship instead of just being siblings. And so
Rob and Jon?
Huh?
Are you talking about Rob and Jon?
Yes.
Okay.
And compared to how Jon was able to have more of a emotional interaction with his sister Arya, because you see, like, throughout the stories, that the men, when the men are going to sit down and to show emotion and to confide in someone, they confide in women. They don't confide in men. I mean,
with
there are some exceptions.
of Robert and Eddard.
Yes. Compared to certain interactions with certain guys, with others, it's more like a kind of it's kind of just like the guys hanging out with each other, and they're gonna say what they say, and they'll turn around and say okay and this and that, but they won't have
But I
that
get what you're
actual.
saying, though. Nobody really gets emo, with
Yeah.
anybody.
Yeah, like the guys
Male to
don't get
male.
emotional with each other, but if they do get emotional, they get emotional with their women instead, or it's always some woman that the men confide in more than even their own brothers and their own fathers and stuff.
But Edward and Robert do have kind of, because we see Robert, kind of let go to Ned a lot, like when he's, talking about how he hates being king, talking about his marriage, talking about how Stannis and Renly are his brothers, but he really doesn't, you're the brother I chose. I think they're about the only two, that we see. And it's mostly on Robert's part as well. Eddard always holds back from Robert a bit because of his great secret and everything.
Yeah, it's a very tough situation.
Yeah, I want to give a shout out to Money G. We're trying to get her on the panel. Accept the invite, Money, if you can hear us, okay?
And one more thing I wrote down, and this is one of those great quotes that makes you love this book. John tells Arya, different roads sometimes lead to the same castle.
Yeah, true.
And in the show, we know perhaps that is going to come into play. We don't really know per the books yet, but I hope so. I hope that's a foreshadowing. I might apply that word too liberally.
Yeah, I want to give a shout out to the people in our chat: Pete Easy, Justin Thomas, Cammy, Alicia had stopped in briefly. Thank you, Alicia, for stopping in. Who else? Ion Tron. Thank you so much, Ion Tron, for coming in. Cameo. Thank you. And Money G. Please accept the invite, Money. If you have any questions, please.
You should be able to just click on the ongoing phone call if you get into Hangouts.
Yeah. Just click on the, what's it called? The little green.
It'll be a gray area, I think. It'll say ongoing call.
Tony, are you there? What's your take on it?
I sounded like with this chapter, like with Kat, like it's crazy when you hear her talk. Like part of me like feels her on how she feels or whatever, but the other half of me is like she's like just all she ever talks about really in her like biggest fear, like you said earlier, is John somehow taking power from her true son Rob. And I think a lot of it has to do with like John, I think if I'm not mistaken, a lot of times you hear about John and Rob, and you hear about how like John is, I think he's like so many months younger than Rob, but he like usually best Rob and everything.
And she begrudges him that.
Yeah, because I'm not sure. I think she says something about that in a chapter about how she like watches them, what they do, and it's like John, is that much better than Rob, and she's probably getting a hint too around the North. Like the North pretty much does their own thing. Like yeah, they might say, "All right, we're in the Seven Kingdoms," but in the North, they value strength and war ability, martial ability. So it's like I can understand where she fears that maybe how John could eventually take it, and on top of that John, it's said a million times how John is like spitting image of Ned. So all her kids all got the auburn hair, and they look like Riverlands, like Andals, and it's like just those two things, John looking northern and John acting northern, you know, it ain't like it's against, these lords in the north to be like, look, we don't want to follow Rob. You know, if he starts doing bonehead, should just look at the war. As soon as he made the decision, cut Lord Rickard's head off, man, he lost most of his army. Like Karstark brought a lot of people to that war, and on top of that, everybody starts to notice, you know, that John or Rob isn't making too sound ideas. They can't stand the fact that he lets his mom counsel him and sit in on these war councils. Like, that's, I think, a lot of part with like Bruce. Like the Boltons always had their thing with the Starks all the way back to the beginning.
All the way from the beginning.
Yeah.
From the
So
beginning.
it's like with the Bolt, all it took Bruce was to see, all right, this ain't going Rob's way, and it's never gonna swing back that direction because of like the decisions he's made, decisions his mother has made. Like I said before, his mother's, the Catelyn's decisions affect Rob more than anybody because like he's sitting there, whispering in his ear what to do and giving him counsel, and then literally taking his prisoner and trying to do an exchange with one of the most grimy families in the damn Seven Kingdoms. And that didn't just start yesterday either. It's been like that for a long time. So it's like, what would have made you think, even if they had Arya and Sansa, that they were like, okay, we got Jaime back. We'll give him back. It's like, it's naive for her to think that way. Like, she knows they're like that because when Liza gave her that note talking about how they killed John Aaron, there was no doubt in her mind that her sister, it's her sister. It has to be true.
Excuse me, Tony. I don't think that it was naive of Catelyn. I think she was desperate by that point.
See, but the thing that's why I say she's naive is because when she sees this, like she talks about how the Lannisters are. So like, and you got Jaime as a prisoner, right? Tywin is the most ruthless of them all. He just doesn't, you won't see him with his hands on the knife. You know what I mean? He's gonna get the thing set up in the background so he can always sit there and say, "I plead the fifth. I didn't do anything." You know what I mean? Even though he benefits from it probably more than the people that actually did the crime or whatever.
And I have to.
Oh, go ahead, Shelley. I'll talk last.
Oh, okay. And I kind of have to agree with you, Tony, on that part because when as far as for the Northern Lords and having Catelyn there as far as their war council, I think that was probably a slap to the face to all the men there because it's not common to have a woman in your war council. And especially a woman that does not know war and does not wield a weapon of her own, technically speaking. And Catelyn, she's never been to war. She's never really held a sword. She's never held a weapon. She's never had to fight. And so it probably was a slap to the face to the Northern Lords having his mother get into all and do all of that. And in a sense, because of her presence, it could have actually been his downfall altogether. Instead of her staying in the north where she should have been as a woman, she should have stayed taking care of the house and watching things and kind of holding the fort instead of trying to jump in and to be a part of a war that she really had no business being a part of,
Yeah, traditionally a woman's place that was raised to be a queen or either in a great household would be to intercede for mercy, help with the poor, and run the household and be in charge of entertainments.
Yeah. And so she stepped her bounds when she ended up walking into the war council and being just on the front as well, because she just, I mean, when we have I know I'm gonna mess up to Larnie. Oh my God, I'm a mess up on her name. The woman who's there, who's helping to take care of the dead and the wounded. I'm like, there, at least for her and the women that she was working with, they had a reason to be there. They had a mission, but they didn't take either one side or the other. They were just there to help anyone who needed help. but Catelyn didn't have even that kind of a role. So her presence wasn't really needed, nor was it probably even wanted. And for Robb, because he is a young boy, it kind of looked more like he had his mom there to hold his hand. But with his mom, she doesn't know anything, and they really should have. Someone should have pulled him to the side and said, "Look, your mother is not fit to be on these battlegrounds."
Exactly. That's how the War of the Roses majorly jumped off, was when
Scheming women.
Henry the Fourth, I believe it's Henry the Fourth, he got sick, and his French queen, Margaret of Anjou, she was called a she-wolf and greatly resented by the Duke of York and Warwick. And
she was a woman. She was a woman who carried a man's arms, and men were ready to accept that.
She was greatly resented, and she was called the she-wolf of France, or the she-devil of France. And the only example in history I can really think of where a woman kind of held her own was Eleanor of Aquitaine. But she was the Duchess of Aquitaine, which was a large region in France.
Right.
A duke is traditionally thought of kind of as being a prince as well. So she kind of had a lot of power, and she was also much better of a politician than Catelyn.
Yes.
We have a comment from Cindy Sammy. She says, if Ned was there, Catelyn wouldn't be allowed in the council, which is true.
And that is true, and that's something that Robb should have taken into consideration as well, is that he should have stopped, and instead of listening to his mother, he should have thought of what his father would do. And I understand that because he just lost his father and he's kind of out of his wits and probably in grief. But in the end, it was kind of up to him to put his mother in her place, because as the new man of the house and the man of the household and of the actual family, that's what he needed to do was to let his mother know, look, you don't need to be joining me because your place is here at Winterfell. And if his mother would have said something, then him being the head of house now, it would have been completely in his right to turn around and to tell her, this is what I'm saying to you, and if you can't agree with that, then I'll severely punish you, kind of deal. So it was kind of a little strange for Robb to have his mother toting around with him in war, because 100%. You never hear that.
And it was probably looked upon like you can't control your women, which is considered a weakness. And when she let Jaime Lannister go, she pretty much signed Robb's death certificate.
Yes,
she did.
Excuse me, I can understand him holding on, to his mother in that time, because things were getting bad. Things were getting bad. They were losing people, and he didn't want to lose, possibly the only family that he had left. The girls were gone. Ned is dead. John's at the wall. I mean, everyone was, completely either dead or separated from each other. So I understand the need for him to hold on, to the only family that he has left at that point.
Yes, I understand why she did why he was like that, but
still in the end, it just wasn't, it was not common to have the women there, because if anything, Catelyn was supposed to still stay at Winterfell, so that if anything happened to him, you always have a Stark in Winterfell. And just no one at all at that time would have thought to bring a woman onto the battleground. So I don't see where she had gotten it into his head to bring her with him, because that was not a common place. The battle war is not a place for women at all. And there were exceptions like Brienne of Tarth, but even then she was not really in a war.
She was not welcomed.
Yes, and she was welcomed, and nor was Catelyn. And so it kind of also makes me sit down and think like, okay, well, did anybody not give him counsel to let Robb know, look, this isn't what you do. You don't turn around and bring your mother, because if something happens on the battleground and she's captured, then she would be a liability.
Okay, well, here's the question for everybody. Do you guys think things would have went differently if Catelyn had stayed at Winterfell?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, she was part of the reason that Rob was in a bad way after losing Jaime Lannister. So yeah, that would have been better. But let me say this: she probably would have been captured by the Ironborn if she had stayed. You
Right.
understand what I'm saying?
I don't know.
I mean,
Henry VIII left Catherine of Aragon one time when he went off to war with the French, and then she ended up capturing the Scottish king. You know. So sometimes leaving your wife in charge, it's not unheard of. And I just wonder if she had been there instead of Bran to direct everything, and would she have not had better foresight of, wait a minute, this might be some kind of tactic to draw the soldiers out of the fortress.
Yeah.
Let's keep in mind, Kat did not go with Rob to war. She went to King's Landing to warn Ned, and then to the Eyrie.
Yeah, that's true.
So
with Tyrion.
The intention was never to be on Rob's war council.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, she kind of got, she didn't go
just
down
one
there,
thing
but
went
she kinda
wrong after the other.
A little bit.
Yeah, she kind of found herself being swept into it. Yeah, that's true. That's absolutely true.
Yeah, and unfortunately, like the minute that she ended up joining and meeting with the forces of the Stark army, that would have been a great time for Rob to let her know, okay, Mom, go ahead and I want you to stay in this tent while I have my war council, and then afterwards we'll have a talk, and then I'm sending you right back up home. And that's pretty much that should have been the way that
There
he
you go, Money. There you go, Money. You made it, Money.
Put
Hi, Money.
Put the archers in.
Hey, everybody, Money G has made it onto our panel. Thank you.
Hey, girl.
Yay!
We're discussing John 2 of Game of Thrones. Have you read that chapter, Money?
Yes, I did.
What's your take on it, since you the new one here on the
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, cool. I remember Catelyn being really cold. It kind of made me sad again. I thought John was really brave how he stepped up with with Catelyn and just came in anyways, even though she was like, get out. But see, I know everybody's like, oh, she's the most evil, but I mean, everybody grieves differently. I am a defender of the underdog to the end, and I know I did not feel this way the first time I read it, but it's all the Catelyn hate that I have a different perspective of her
Anger.
Her character, yeah.
It's all the Catelyn hate. I have a different perspective of her, just not wanting to deal with John. Like, although my heart does break because it is his brother, and it's just like I want to kind of know where Ned is. Like, it's like, hey, like where's the buffer? Like he stood up for him, like begging him, like please let him stay at Winterfell and let it be okay. But then it was like,
She was like, I won't have him here.
There.
Yeah.
No, I can't hear you. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. So yeah, I felt really bad. But I was like, yay! I was like so happy that John went in and did what he had to do and said goodbye to his brother. So but I do empathize with with Catelyn just because of her grieving. Like, I mean, I don't think what she did was right, but everybody grieves differently, and like I said, I question where was Ned? Like, where was the buffer? He wanted him to stay there at Winterfell. He wanted Cat to welcome him and keep him there, but you know, he wasn't there
Yeah.
to say goodbye to his.
And see, that's something that I think of as well is in certain situations like this, like, where is Ned to sit down and to put his wife in her place, you know, because a lot of times you end up seeing Ned and and he ends up going and running off somewhere or doing something, and it's almost like he makes it like he makes a he's always trying to make sure that he's not around whenever John and Catelyn have an interaction with each other. And so that's why it was kind of interesting to me, because I kind of figured that that Ned would sit down and he would have observed this over the boys' 14 years, and that he would have turned around and he would have shot her down a few times and told her, look, regardless of what's going on, do not treat that boy in this manner, because this is my son regardless. And I don't know. It seems like Ned never really established himself as far as what Catelyn is concerned, you know?
Well, he told her, he's my blood, and that's all you need to know.
And that's
Yeah.
that's the thing, like with Catelyn, it's like the prime example of why you can't judge a book by its cover, because when you see her, like, you know, and on the outside, she, you know, this everybody looks at her as just like, you know, real kind-hearted, you know, wife of Ned Stark, and it's like you can't see her being anything other than that. But when she interacts with John, like, you just see this hateful, spitefulness come out of her, and it's like weird when you first see it, because you're like, you know, she doesn't come off like that, and it's
Yeah.
but she you can see how, like, inside how she's really feeling about this boy. Like, even when she says that story about right in the show when talking about how he almost died when he was a baby, and how she felt responsible for saying, you know, for how she was treating him and how she felt about him, and asked the old gods in the new that you know, if this baby survives, then I will be a mother to him, and she that there just literally went right back on as soon as he was okay.
Yeah.
Right, but the same way though, Shelley, though, I don't know that Ned could have necessarily put her in her place about it, but just to maybe like like I said, everybody grieves differently. Oops, sorry. So, you know, but like put a hand on her shoulder, you know, and just been like, because I don't think she would have like been like, get out, you know, like so.
True.
You know,
See, like my own self, like back in those kind of days, like women, if a woman would even talk out of turn, technically speaking, the husband would sit down and backhand her or beat the shit out of her, just
like Robert to Thursday.
Yeah. And so in that kind of a time, like, it wouldn't have been too uncommon for Ned to actually have disciplined Catelyn, just because of like, you're supposed to turn around, and if you can't follow, like, since she married into the Starks, and the Starks turn around and they have a certain honor to themselves, and if Catelyn would have sat down and said something, that's why I was surprised that Ned didn't put his foot down, like what would have been common as far as that time is concerned, you know, because when stuff happens, especially in war, technically speaking, men will do what they do, and for her to be upset and think that she has the only man that shouldn't sit down and go and take a woman just for the hell of it. You have to think like the men that are around him, like Robin, and for instance, he was known as a man whore, and he slept around with so many kids and had so many bastards that let Catelyn had married Rob, and had it been a different situation where she had married Robert Baratheon, she would have been put in her place a few good times until she just would say, fuck it, I'm not going to say another word ever again for the rest of our marriage, kind of deal, you know. But then in the sense, because she has Lord Eddard Stark, and because he's gone through so much losing his family as it is, and it's now his duty to marry this woman, I think that he just got to a point where he was like, look, that I could care less what she does as long as she has a couple of children and whatever, because it really, when you're looking at the storyline, they don't really have too much time, and they don't really talk to each other, and they don't really confide in each other.
Really? Yeah,
And yeah.
You think so? Because I thought, I don't know, even though,
I mean, they do conversate about a couple of things, but in all truth, like it really shows to Ned's character that he didn't inform her about the whole situation with Lyanna, and just kind of he doesn't really confide in his wife, which means that he doesn't really either value her or trust her.
No, that was a secret. He promised not to tell anybody.
Right. I think it was for the safety of everyone.
And that was
true.
The less people who knew, the better.
I think that was who he was. That was a secret. He promised her, and that was it. It didn't matter. It did not matter.
Like, regardless of.
Because if you looked at it, I mean, I don't know if Ned probably could look in and see that's what she'd be like. But could you imagine, like all these people say, like, you know, he should have told Cat. He should have told Cat. You see how she was to John without being told. Now you imagine her being told that he is, you know, maybe they don't know he's a pure, you know, Targaryen. But just even being a Targaryen bastard of the crown prince of Westeros, that she would have even thought more that Rob was at risk, even though they're in the north. It's just the thing, he's got that royal claim. That,
exactly.
I think that would have made her even 10 times worse.
I don't think it would have, and I think if she would have been seen as treating him any other way than she did, it might have raised a bit of red flags.
Yep.
You know, because that was a major slight to bring a bastard home. It really was. Yep. And especially the way she was raised, where her father was with her mother till she died. She was kind of the favored child. When I read the text, it's quite obvious to me that she was kind of the favored child. And she does, we think about Cersei as being the one who has a sense of entitlement, but actually Caitlyn had quite a bit of a sense of entitlement, and I believe not only for their safety, but
I think deservedly so. I think she was the good daughter. I think she was going to.
Yes,
she was her father's daughter. She was like, you know, what's their family crest?
The fish.
Family honor.
Family duty honor. Yeah.
Family honor. Like she lived by those even as a Stark. You know, I like the fact that she didn't like her husband's bastard. You know what? She didn't make him sleep in the stable. Like
right. Just like in the show, how Melisandre goes, well, at least you had feasts, Jon Snow. There were feasts. There were you know, and John realizes when he gets to the wall, you know what? I actually had it pretty good. And then
and that was because of the sake of his father. And so it does show that Ned did try to shelter that boy to what he could.
And he that was just the whole point. It's just that, like, that was when I read this chapter, that was all that I was missing, was like, why couldn't Ned have just been there just to put his hand on, just to soften it? I guess that's the whole point of the whole story is like.
I think he has to give Kat a little bit of leeway because, like I said, that was a major slight, or if you will, to her. Like, Cersei knew Robert had many a bastard, but she's not the one who ordered him killed, nor would he have dreamed of bringing one to live at the Red Keep.
For sure.
Yeah.
But I'm just like to say goodbye to the brother. That's all. That in my heart. That's all I would. I'm like. That's why it's crazy that I even dig these books so much, because I'm all like, where's the sparkles and rainbows and sunshine? I'm like, oh, couldn't he just have had a fuzzy blanket for? But no, that's not these books. I know it's not, but that's the Moni Sunshine. But so that was my take. So, anyways, it was good. It was good remembering back too, and it was, because at this point, nobody knows if he's gonna really live or die. I remember reading this. I mean, you kind of, I know I didn't know at the time. They kind of thought. I mean, I reread Tyrion's again, and it was like they said, "Ooh, they think he might live," but when I first reread it, I didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
I was hoping. He wants to have a kid die. I mean, this book was a trip to read for the first time.
True. And I bringing it up that part where Tyrion sits down and he makes the comment that Bran might actually survive, and having Cersei sit down and how she says, oh, well, that's unfortunate, they should just let him go peacefully, and just how she just really wants them to get rid of that poor boy, to get rid of her secret. I just, oh man, that just brings up so much.
Cersei's secret. Oh, when she talks with her?
No, the secret of her and her brother having sex.
Oh, yeah, what I do for love.
Yeah, the things I do for love.
Since we're talking about Jon, and now you brought up Cersei, do you think any of them coming to Winterfell had anything to do with them knowing that Jon was a Targaryen?
I think that the royal family suspected it. I think they did. I don't think that Catelyn ever did, but I think that Cersei and Robert always did.
Well, I don't know about Robert, because if Robert had any inkling that he was a Targaryen, then he would have confronted Ned real quick and said, "Where did that boy come from?" But the way that I had seen it, as far as the show was concerned, was that Ned had made sure to say, "Oh yeah, well, I just had to sneak off real quick, and then I came back and there was a babe." And because for King Robert, he remembers that there was a story that was told as to how he ended up with that bastard, and it was because he had lain with a woman. And that's when Rob was trying to say, "Hey, who was it again that you had slept with, and this and that," and Ned just doesn't touch you with a 10-foot pole,
You keep saying Rob, but I assume you mean Robert Baratheon, right?
Yes, Robert Baratheon. I'm sorry. I said King Robert, but yeah.
Y'all, Steph Shayna's got a comment in the chat.
Ooh, what?
Steph Shayna has a point.
What did you say?
She says she thinks that I am completely wrong.
What?
Oh, hold on.
Yeah, she says, I think you're completely wrong, Lady Wolverton. She is scared because Rob is Brandon.
Hey, that's okay. That's what our chats are all about. We can agree to disagree. Let's talk about that. Who does think? Because if I had to bet on it, I would say that, yeah, maybe Brandon and Kat did fool around before he went to the Capitol, because she did not want him to go.
I think that Rob is could
I think yeah,
definitely.
I think it's a good possibility.
Yeah.
I think that Rob is the son of Brandon Stark, and that's why it was a quickie marriage between. I mean, besides just the alliance factor, I think that was also why Ned had to marry, especially when Ned, and being who he was, I think with Ashara Dane. We don't know that for sure, but I'm assuming that Ashara and Ned did get married, and I think that Ned did tell them, and that's when the Blackfish broke off and said, "I can't believe you're gonna screw over
Right.
this kid's wedding at the Godswood to make him marry Kat, right?" This is just so, and but I think that her dad knew some shenanigans had happened, and unlike what he did to Lysa, he wasn't gonna make her drink any freaking tea. He was just gonna get her married to the next Stark, and that alliance in set. And I also think that was another reason why she hated what John so much more, also because in her heart she knew that her son Rob was possibly not really Eddard's. Yeah.
We needed more
Well, I do believe that Rob and I do believe that Catelyn definitely shows a deference to Sansa and Rob.
Yeah, so I think that would, I mean, that makes a lot of sense too, even why, because like after she prayed when he was sick as a baby, and she really meant it, but just having that feeling, like, I mean, if you had that, I mean, because that's her own secret, she never shared. I mean, this is my own little tinfoil tiara. Like if that was her secret, and she was keeping that from her husband, and it was like, they did have a wedding night. So whatever, and then he went off to war and he brought home this bastard. But okay, so that was really his first true born, and maybe it was from his wedding night. She doesn't know for sure because she knew maybe he was married though. I mean, she wasn't in on those conversations. I'm sure she wasn't supposed to be.
And Cindy Sammy says, "How could you establish that you brought a bastard boy to Catelyn and she would accept it? Ned kept quiet in order to keep up with the ruse that he was a bit ashamed of his infidelity." I agree. And I'm not sure what I said, Septa, that you said that you disagreed with me. But I just have always thought that Ned kind
pretty
of
much anything from the beginning.
Say it again?
I said pretty much anything from the beginning, but I was just kidding.
Okay. I just think that Ned let her get away with snubbing John a bit because, it's quite uncommon to have an acknowledged bastard in your household. Especially if you had true-born children.
We
see the Freys do it. We see Walder Frey do it.
Yeah, Walder Frey did keep up with his family. I have to give that old goat that. But I want to talk about Robert just for a second. Robert, was a heavy drunk, and he overate and he indulged in prostitutes. And I think that all of that was a distraction from what he thought to be true. I mean, I think on some level he knew what was going on with Cersei and Jaime, and I think he may have even known about John, but refused to acknowledge it because, by, drinking and whoring, and I think he just used all of that, extracurricular activity as some sort of a distraction, to keep him, from acknowledging, the truth about his entire situation. I could be wrong, but I really believe that. I think, all that time he spent hunting and whoring and drinking, he was just trying to run away from, run away from, the truth of the situation. I think he knew what was going on with Ned as regards to John. I think it was easier. But I think it was easier that he just thought he just went off and had sex with some whore because that's what he's doing,
So even all along with Jamie and Cersei, you mean?
Yeah.
So, but even though from the very beginning when he was all so sad about Lyanna.
Yeah, I think that's another reason. He's, dulling the pain by drinking and whoring to keep from thinking of Lyanna and thinking about, what his marriage is and what his life was. I think he just started to, drink and throw himself away instead of, just acknowledging what was going on around him.
But do you think that do you think that he had that suspicion before they got married? Do you guys really think that it was very well known about Jamie and Cersei?
No, not before they got married. I'm talking about during the marriage. How can a husband not know what's going on with his wife? If it's a good husband, he should have sensed something.
But because she took care of him, remember? She made sure he came home drunk, and she still took care of business.
Yeah,
there are ways of.
Yeah, but you can't fool your husband forever. That's what I'm saying. And I think he had an idea, but he just didn't want to acknowledge it. It was easier for him to just.
He didn't want to be a cuckold.
Yeah,
he didn't want to be a cuckold.
Mm-hmm. He didn't want to start all the drama. He was just happy, hunting and whoring and doing his thing, and he didn't want to go through the mess of all of that. So I think it was just easier for him to just go and get drunk and do it that way.
Also, we know if he'd have tried to set Cersei aside while Tywin was alive, it would have been war.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
See,
most definitely.
There's a part of me that thinks that, I think that Cersei did have the fairy tale marriage in mind in the beginning, and when her heart got crushed about him still wanting Lyanna, and then that really did break her heart, and so then she did fester some crazy hatred, and I think Robert was one who wanted to be worshipped and adored. So when Cersei couldn't do that, every other girl in the kingdom could. So sure, it was a marriage of convenience, but I think that, I don't know. I also think that he easily turned a blind eye. I think that Robert was a good time party guy. I wouldn't have ever wanted to have him mad at me, but I wouldn't have wanted him to have my boyfriend or husband either.
No.
But I'd party with him, man. He partied like a Viking.
Yeah. I just think that he was not just cut out to rule. He was just cut out to win the throne, but not so much to sit upon the throne and lead the people. And,
when I think about Robert Baratheon, I think about General Grant, President Grant. Great general, terrible president.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but he didn't like the sight of blood. Can you imagine? How do you fight in wars and not like the sight of blood? Mm-hmm. Oh, but I was just thinking, well, would he have been good as maybe a Kingsguard?
Mm-hmm.
And not getting married at all. But see, he was the oldest though, so.
Yeah, he had to get married, and
yeah, he had to have some kind of a title.
Mm-hmm.
Huh. But his baby, I think his youngest brother would have been a good king. I don't think Stannis would have been a good king, and I'm ready for all the hate.
Yeah, I was just gonna say you're gonna get some hate behind that, girl.
Well, I think you find yourself.
What happened?
Yeah, I think you find yourself in good company, Money, because I don't think you would have been a good king either. Because I just don't think that. He just was too He didn't have that heart. Stannis didn't have that heart. You know, you have to be a heart.
No
You have to-
empathy.
you have to have heart to be a good leader, and he had no heart.
Yeah, and you have to have understanding. Just like AU commented, I know he was joking, but he was like, yeah, Stannis didn't want any brothels. But hey, that's a big deal, you know, and camp followers behind an army are as old as time, you know? So, yeah, he you know, he didn't ingratiate himself to people. And I know part of it was him being a hardline leader, but people don't necessarily, you know, if you're not the same way, you don't necessarily love those kind of rules.
Yeah, let me say this about prostitution back in that time period. Cersei, you know, brought up a good point when the Sparrow shut down the brothels. You know, she said in the books that the brothels keep rape down, which is a good point. I mean, it's kind of like a house without a bathroom. It's a dirty place where you expel your waste, but it's needed. And I think that is true of the brothels, you know, and the whorehouses and places like that. I mean, it kind of does keep rape down. You, if you're a man, you want to get laid, go to the cat house and do your business, put the money on the table, and you leave. And
well, they say prostitution is the oldest profession, and it will always exist in one form or another.
Oh yeah. And you know, it's like a house without a bathroom. You need to.
Oh Lord.
Any questions? Please put them in the chat, please. Are there any other points that anyone wants to bring up?
What y'all think? Oh, Shelley, I don't know if you saw, and I typed it in the comments, but did you see? Winterfell had like really nice greenhouses, so actually I think they did have quite a variety of food. Like, I mean, Bran was eating blackberries and stuff, you know?
Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, no, I wasn't. But wait, I wasn't talking about Winterfell with the food. I was talking about when Bran was training with Bloodraven.
Oh, ew! No, that's something totally different.
Yeah, because there wasn't too much food up north, you know, and that's why I was sitting there making a joke, like, it's not like they can outsource from Highgarden all the way up there past the wall.
All right, I didn't hear the first part, because I was like, wait, no, Winterfell, like, for being in the that was actually.
I know Winterfell. It has its own stores of food, and they also have places where they do have their own people who grow food as well. So that part, yeah, I know about. But up there where poor Bran was training, there was no way that he would be able to gain any kind of muscle or any kind of mass while he was up there, because there was hardly any food to eat that far up north, you know.
Yeah, gross. No, that was gross.
They were fishing, I believe. There was a little stream in that cave, and I believe they were eating a bit of fish, and that's all I can really remember, that I can remember for sure they were eating.
You know, that's a good point. I was thinking about that Ned chapter when Robert and Ned were talking. He was talking about Highgarden. It's a shame that they didn't get, you know, with Highgarden. I said this some weeks ago. But Highgarden was the one with the food, and they're going into winter, and you can't plant in the winter time. And it's a shame that they didn't go that route.
I'm going to say something about the show here for a minute. That was a very smart move for Jamie to go and get that food from Highgarden. Very, very smart indeed.
Get the
and the money. Yeah, and the money. You know, and though Dany got a good bit of those supplies with Drogon, she didn't get all of them, and she didn't get that money. And that was very smart.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, absolutely. Especially when winter was coming, and she knows nothing about the Westeros and winters.
Right. That was one of the Lannister at the time when they were united. That was one of their best moves.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, it makes me want to watch that.
I remember watching that episode and going, did they get that money? If they got that money, Cersei's not fixing to die for a while. That's going to save her ass. Right there. They need that money.
And I mean, it's really, really sad as far as Dany goes. I mean, she couldn't see that ahead of time. All she saw was taking over and burning up the dragons, and I mean, using the dragons to burn up everyone, and she's not even thinking about food and how you're gonna make it through this long winter that's coming. I mean, it's really sad, and how it really showed how short-sighted she was. I mean, Cersei trounced her that in the previous season. I mean, getting the food, getting the alliances, and I mean, I just thought that Cersei really did a good job. She really showed, the good part of her, as far as ruling. Even though she's a very evil and despicable woman, she knew enough to get that food. She knew enough to move her people away from Casterly Rock and over to High Garden. I mean, it just really showed that she can be a good ruler if she wanted to be, but she's so evil and short-sighted. And I mean, to me, Cersei just owned that season, in comparison.
Oh, yes, she did. Yes, she did.
Talk about that, like, okay, was it just a metamorphosis or what? Like, 'cause she did seem so smarter.
Yeah.
More smart.
Oh yeah, compared to the books. Yeah, in the books she was just a mess from top.
But like, I mean, it's like, did like Tywin being gone, like
Well, I mean, Cersei is a fighter. She's used to the fight, so I'm sure she knows how to handle herself more in a fight than she would during peacetime. Put it like that.
But I'm just wondering if maybe that allowed her, once she was out from under her dad's rule, if that allowed her to step up.
Well,
I mean,
in the book she certainly doesn't.
No, but her dad's always around.
But not in the books, in Feast for Crows, when after Tywin dies, And it was her chance to take the step up, and she made a point of that. She made a point of burning down the Tower of the Hand because she was sick of these hands telling her and what to do and circumnavigating her power and everything. It was her chance to step up, and she wanted to, but her actions and her decision making was awful.
I see, but it's that kind of crazy though that I kind of almost admire her just a little bit. Because I wouldn't want to just kind of just
don't back down from a fight. I have to give you credit.
I know, but it's the kind of thing that, don't you wish? Well, see, at least I wish, because I was brought up a good girl. I still am a good girl, so I would never. I would never burn down.
Oh, you want to be a bad girl, money, and that's what that is.
I came in and I heard good girl, bad girl. I'm like, what?
When I'm bad, I'm better, but that's not the point. The point is I couldn't burn down, probably. Sometimes there's just not enough rocks, I guess. But that'd be, I think, so freeing to be able to. Well, no, but she burnt down the tower. I thought more. It wasn't to be away from the hand, to be out from under his hand. I thought it was to find out where Tyrion was. I thought it was to get him out of the walls.
No, it wasn't about Tyrion. She searched the walls thinking that he was there, but by the time she burned down that hand, it wasn't about Tyrion anymore. It was about her. She wanted to be free of the hands, and she was sick of the tower looming above her. She wanted that out of the way. She wanted total power unto herself. And she didn't want any hands. She didn't want any masters to circumnavigate her authority.
That's a really good way of looking at it, Misha.
Because I did not see it that way. I thought, I mean, I dig that point for sure, but I totally
me too.
Her trying to make sure that Tyrion was not in the walls. Because let's face it, you could be hiding in the Red Keep probably forever if you knew the right passages.
Yeah, that's true. But I mean, I think maybe that could have been going through her mind. But the truth is,
Because that's what I thought. That I didn't, but I like that perspective. I like that thought.
I do too. You know, she had gotten super paranoid that he was still somewhere looming around that castle. And also I had took it like she was so upset over Tywin's death that she wanted any reminders of the bad shit that happened there gone. But I like what Misha brought up. I never thought about it that way. But Moni G, you look so cute tonight.
Oh, thank you.
I love your plaid, and you just look exuberant.
I forgot. Like it was Thursday. It's been kind of crazy here, and I already took off my makeup and everything. I did.
You don't need much. You got a beautiful complexion. Really beautiful.
I did the same thing, Moni. We're good.
Thank you very much. Now I'm blushing. So, but
that's happiness. That's
I love your Thursday capitulation.
Yeah, Broke Black Man is very much a fan of Cersei. she's
I know, but Cersei equal to Palpatine? Okay,
yeah.
that's no. Well, I mean, yes, maybe, but you love the bad guy in Star Wars? No, not the dark side. See, I'm a Jedi.
Tony, right. John, y'all got anything? The ladies are just, us ladies always love to talk.
we got the gift of gab here. So, if you have any questions or, any questions on the panel.
The only question I had was in regards to John being afraid of the crypts. Was afraid? I mean, because he played in them as a kid. He always had that fear.
Well, I mean, if it were me, I kind of would be afraid of it too. It doesn't look too homey.
Right. I think he thinks of it as the ultimate place that he really doesn't belong in Winter. He already feels like he doesn't belong in Winterfell, but he knows he will never be buried there. So I think he thinks of it as the ultimate place that he's unwelcome.
Yeah. I'm saying good night to Cammie. Thank you, Cammie.
Bye, Cammie.
Bye.
Bye, Cammie.
Cammie left. I'm sorry, y'all.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming. We appreciate you. And thank you so much for sharing the link and everything. Just thank you so much, Cammie. Really appreciate you.
Yes, I see myself as Leia too, you guys. Thank you. My nephew called me the White Princess when he was like only 2 years old. I don't even think that he watched Star Wars, but he was talking about that, so I cling to that. So that's awesome. I'm like, my head is probably getting bigger as we speak.
I love you, Moni. I can't
see, like from one story. Okay, like Star Wars to this story. Like what? How can she love both? Huh? Like, well, I guess Star Wars is getting a little darker, but still, like this one. Sometimes I wonder. I talk and I go, "Oh my gosh, wait!" Because I do love this story, but it is. I go, why? Because I'm always afraid. When's the other shoe gonna drop? When are all our heroes gonna die?
Definitely. And I think that's what GRM wanted us to feel,
Tortured and confused.
Yeah.
No. But it's all been good. You guys.
Yeah, I mean, I think George R. Martin, he doesn't shy away from the horrible aspects of it. And I appreciate him for that, but sometimes I
I do
wish he
too.
would give me, a little bit of a reprieve from all of the enemies, winning and taking over. I mean, I think it's gonna come to a head, when Winter comes out. I think the tide is gonna turn eventually, but sometimes he's taking a little too long with some of these people.
Oh,
I want
bye,
them.
Cindy.
Yeah, I want to
Cindy
get.
Sammy has to go. Bye, Cindy. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
We really enjoyed you.
yeah. Thank you, Cindy, for joining us. And I mean, as far as what I was saying, I just want some of these people to get got right now because Uh,
Shoot, I'm still just reeling, just thinking about your guy now. Just thinking, like, cause shoot, you got me thinking about the cash road and the dragons, and then and now Littlefinger is gone. What? What?
man,
Oh, now
no,
you're talking about Misha's man, her
yeah,
main man
Yeah,
right there.
yes, I know that. But do y'all think that's just do you think that's just show? Do you really think he's gonna be gone in the books? See,
no, I don't
then,
know.
then I start like doing that like with my because now that we don't have the next books, I'm like, yeah, okay, well, I can handle some of this stuff because it's not
Who on
real.
the panel would rather get the next book before the finale, before the end of the series?
I wanted it yesterday.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah,
I think everybody wants wins out
I've
right
been
now.
wanting that book for every year. I'm like, this year it'll come out. This year it'll come out. And
Yeah.
every year I'm disappointed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, Lord of the last Hearth, he left us.
I
Oh.
probably
But
actually fell out. He'll probably pop back in.
yeah, true.
Yeah.
But yeah, as far as Winter goes, yeah, absolutely. We all want it here. I mean, who doesn't? Who doesn't? Who a Game of Thrones fan doesn't want it to come out? I
After
mean,
Oh, John, I like your
Dragon-
start banner. I never seen that one like that.
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm just not seeing the bottom of it.
Oh, okay.
Is what it is.
Yeah. It's on a black background. That's all.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, awesome.
But he
I like
after
it.
Dragons, he had 500 pages of TWOW, right? So that was 6 years ago. So
mhm.
he's got to have that finished.
I think he
I
does. I
think
think
he's
they're
just
sitting
waiting.
on it for merchandise reasons and to basically milk it.
Yeah,
I think he's waiting until the end of this series.
Yeah, I do
The
too.
TV series.
I think the reason why George R. R. Martin hasn't dropped that sixth book is maybe because it's so far from the actual show story that if he was to drop it right now and then they finish off the series, everybody's gonna be like, well, what the heck happened between here and here, kind of deal,
Yeah.
I think just from a merchandising and a marketing perspective, that he's doing good to hold on to it and keep us wanting and to also keep it out there.
Yeah, but he can't wait too long. He can't wait too long with this.
That's
Well, no,
what I
because
think.
I've seen the timelines that he's had between these books, and I'm actually glad that I it took me so long to pick up the series because I'm used to a series coming out maybe like a book every year or 2 years, but these were like, wow, some of them had like 5 years or more in
5
between
years,
them.
I think, was the average. Yeah, 5 years.
Oh my God.
Shelley, I had
Yeah.
I had to wait for Dan.
Yeah,
And
me
that
too.
it was brutal. Like,
Did anybody read the book before the show? Did anybody on our panel or in the chat actually read these books before the show?
Right before.
oh, did you? Okay.
Right before, yeah.
Did you know the show was coming out and grab the books, or did you just happen to grab the book?
I had a interaction with the HBO rep, and they were showing us some of the scenes. So I started reading it as soon as I knew what was going on, that it was going to be a big show.
Wow.
You know, that actually, that sounds like a place out here in Vegas, where people, there's this place, it's an attraction that's down off of, it's in one of the hotels, and you actually get paid a few bucks to see new and upcoming shows, like they do like a test panel right over there off the strip. And that's when I had seen I forget what new show it was. It was like a Western kind of deal, like not Westwood, but something along those lines.
Yeah.
Oh, wasn't it that show that come on with Colin Bohannon? What was the name of that show?
I
You
don't know
guys
what
know
the
what I'm
name
talking
of
about?
that.
Common was in it. It's a good show.
Yeah,
It gets a little
and
crazy
they
the
had
last few seasons.
and they had done a pilot for it, and I had seen it out here, you know. So that's something that they do out here, but that's very interesting that you know HBO rec.
Yeah. Tell us about that.
Who are you?
Did you get that in? I want to know how that happened.
I work
Were you-
for a cable company, and so they would bring us a lot of merchandise for customers.
Nice.
And they would also, talk about the creation of the show, like Dead
Nice.
and the Mafia one. Goodness gracious!
Sopranos.
The Sopranos.
Yes, I'm so sorry, but
I didn't
I
see
mean,
it.
we would get all kinds of merchandise. As a matter of fact, oh, hold on.
Okay.
Were all you guys into like reading fantasy books before and everything too?
Not at all.
Yeah.
This was the first fantasy book I ever read.
See, I used to be into the stuff like what is it? I used to be a lot into King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table kind of stuff, and then I also liked some of the other like lores and mythologies and folklores and
Yeah, I've
yeah.
read that kind of stuff. Yeah,
Yeah,
I've read
so-
that kind of stuff.
Too, but I never read fantasy ever before, like really that.
Definitely have read the Mort Day author, Mallory.
And I also do like the science fiction kind of stuff too, like with robots and then hybrids and aliens and all that kind of crazy stuff. Like I grew up in a household where we were like Star Trek and Stargate was like my mother's favorite shows. So
Okay,
yeah.
so you're
And
a
Star
Trekkie
Wars.
fan of Star Wars.
Yeah, my mom, she was a big Star Wars fan. Like I had watched it when I was like growing up, but it never dawned on me like what was really going on because I never got into the books because when I was younger, I was just like, well, it's a popular movie. Everybody and their mama's going to see it, so I'll just go see it too, kind of deal, you know. So when it comes to like Star Wars, my mom was, huh?
Are you prejudiced against Star Wars people because you're a Trekkie?
No, my mom's a Trekkie. That's the whole point. She's a Star Wars and she was a Star Trek. She was first she was a Trekkie before she was a Star Wars fan, but she was a Star Wars fan. And then Stargate came out and oh my God, that was like the beginning of the end because I watched all the different Stargate versions and everything and yeah.
Yeah,
So I got used to it being exposed to, you know.
Yeah, I was a
And
fan.
you have to go.
Oh, you gotta
John,
go?
thank you so much.
Oh,
Such
okay.
an honor. You're
Wait, what
welcome
else
back
did you do?
anytime.
It was a lot of
Yeah.
fun. We'll have to do it again
Okay.
sometime.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, and thank you for your video as well. So,
Bye, Moni.
Bye. It was
Yeah.
good to see you. Nice to talk to you.
okay.
Same here.
Thank you.
I might end up going as well so that I can wrangle in these kids. That's why I keep having to put my thing on mute because the baby's turning around and she's flipping out. So
Okay, well let's go ahead and end it then. Let's go ahead and end it for tonight. It's been 2 hours, so let's.
Okay, yeah.
Well, thank you, Misha, for letting me in.
Yeah, that's fine. Do you know how to get on now? You know
I
how to
think
set
so.
the invite? Okay.
Awesome.
Okay.
Awesome.
Everybody do their outros and plugins and promos if you can. We can end it here.
Okay,
Okay,
well, I'm Jen. You can find me on Twitter at Jennifer Wolverton and also Facebook, Jennifer Wolverton. Thanks, everybody in the chat. Thank you, Misha, for having me. Thank you so much, AU Packmule. It was just a real honor to have you on tonight. Thank you, Shelley. Thank you, Moni, for joining us. Septishana, we can always agree to disagree, girl. That's fine. That's what this is all about. You know, it's not about who's right or who's wrong. It's a conversation amongst friends.
Go ahead, Shelley.
Okay, said I'm Shelley. I thank you so much. Thank you to Tony and AU Packmule. Thank you, Monty. Thank you, Jen. Oh, these girls are driving me nuts. All right, let me get off of the stream. Thank you,
Okay.
Misha, so much, and I'll see you next week.
Okay,
Bye,
thank you.
Shelley.
And everybody, this is Misha Houston. Thank you all so much for joining us. Next week, we're doing Daenerys 2, and this is her wedding day and wedding night. Who will be, is it going to be me or Tony or you, Jennifer, doing the overview? I wouldn't mind a week off, so.
You wouldn't?
Yeah, I wouldn't mind a week off.
I'll catch it. That's fine.
Okay, thank you for that. Now I'll start back up
No,
next
it's
week.
no problem.
I mean, a week from the next week. And I'll do the next chapter. So thank you, everyone in the chat, for joining us. We had a full house tonight. I'm so happy.
And Misha,
Yeah, we did. It was a great chat tonight. Thank you, everybody who popped in. BBM, Pete Easy, Septishana Sapphires, Moni, Cindy Sammy,
Russell Wolverton. Thank you.
Spirit.
Yeah. Cindy Sandy, Cammy, Bro Black Man.
Cammy. Yeah.
BBM.
Thank y'all so much. Pete, just great to have y'all. Great to see y'all. Iron Throne popped in. Thank you so much.
Alicia, thank you for stopping in. Justin Thomas.
Yeah,
Hopefully we can get you on
stopped
next
in.
week. Yeah, Justin Thomas. I hope you get your situation and come back to our chat. I wouldn't mind having you here for next week. You know, and next week is Thanksgiving, and we are going to have a Thanksgiving live stream for next week. So I'm looking forward to Thanksgiving, and I hope we all have a wonderful year, and I hope we have a lot to be thankful for. I think we do have a lot to be thankful for. So thank you, everyone. Thank you all so much, and check out my channel. I will be putting out a video. I will be putting out my next video. I'm trying here.
And Misha, thank you for being the hostess with the mostest. You're fabulous.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, and good night, everybody. Thank you, and good night to all of us on the panel.
Good night, everybody. Have a great weekend.
Thank you. You too.
Night.
Good night.